I've wanted to make a G&B video for a long while now, and I suppose now is as good a time as any to do it. So, before I start, I have to apologize for the fact that I have not really played Guts and Blackpowder, well, ever, and therefore this video will be pretty different from the others that I've made. The purpose of this video is to clearly show a compact summary of the lore of Guts and Blackpowder. Let me take you back to the late stages of the Russo-Turkish War around the year 1812, where a disease later known as the BLIGHT started among Russian and Turkish ranks. Although the outbreaks were able to be contained, they were often attributed to other diseases such as the Black Death or miasma. Sinners who have failed to accept Christ and repent for their sins, upon succumbing to the infection, would reanimate and become zombies. So I'm just going to assume that you know what happened in the Napoleonic Wars until now. On the 14th of September, the Russians would set fire to the city of Moscow shortly before French troops arrived into the city. However, quickly following the burning of Moscow, thousands of corpses would resurrect and slowly begin to wreak chaos against Europe. The French still retreated from Moscow for the same reasons they did in real life. However, at this point, our timeline begins to deviate. Following the burning of Moscow, French forces would begin their rapid retreat from Russia. However, as they were retreating over the Berezina river located in modern-day Belarus, a trigger-happy Frenchman would blow up the initial bridge across the river, leaving Marshal Claude Victor Perrin's 9th Corps and stragglers stuck on the other side of the river. Victor would order the construction of a new bridge. However, as the bridge was being built, the French soldiers building the bridge would be the first to encounter the infected. After fighting off hordes of infected and building the bridge, the 9th Corps would successfully cross the river. This became the first time humans encountered the affected zombies of the BLIGHT. During a blizzard, the Royal Navy loses control of a tow ship carrying infected individuals, which crashes on the island of Vardø. The next day, the HMS Undaunted sends a 15-man crew to investigate. Only 4 would return. They report mad men turned cannibals in the village on the island. With another blizzard approaching, the Undaunted remains docked nearby, waiting for a signal from the lighthouse, hoping Royal Marines may still be alive. Meanwhile, Danish soldiers at Vardø's fortress retreat to a basement as infecteds attack. After suffering casualties, they flee, ring the church bell and activate the lighthouse, drawing the attention of the Undaunted. The full events at Vardø remain a mystery until 1815, when Danish investigators recover bodies and find a still living runner encased in ice. Their remains are returned to Copenhagen for study. During the siege of San Sebastian, British and Portuguese soldiers are captured by French and imprisoned on the fortress at the top of the island. At some point following the British breach of the main rampart and the French retreat up the hill, the BLIGHT strikes San Sebastian, killing everyone in the city except for the survivors in the citadel and various stragglers. The British army, caught completely unprepared for this threat, retreats fully disorganized. Inevitably, a French officer decides to release the British Portuguese prisoners and arm them against the threat. These forces then make their way through San Sebastian and encounter Barry, a soldier of the 5th Regiment of Foot. The survivors are extracted to the HMS Undaunted. One of the survivors succumbs to the infection and kills the captain of the HMS Undaunted. The French and British forces parted ways, with the British landing off the coast of Spain and being guided by the Spanish guerrilla forces along the countryside. Jonathan Baker was a British soldier at San Sebastian during the initial outbreak. He leaves 2 notes for the player to find. Here they are on screen, if you'd like to read them. Amidst one of the largest and bloodiest battles of the Napoleonic Wars, both coalition and French forces would unexpectedly encounter the BLIGHT. As the infection spreads rapidly across the battlefield, it would become clear that traditional lines of conflict would no longer matter. Regiments across Europe, French, Prussian, Austrian, Russian and others, are forced to set aside their hostilities and unite in a desperate bid for survival. Leipzig descends into chaos and as the undead swarm both armies, streets burn, strongholds would collapse, and the city's civilian population would be attacked by the infected. In the face of overwhelming honor, the many nations would form an alliance to band together and fight through the crumbling city, narrowly escaping their ever-growing tide of the infected. Word of the outbreak would reach the highest levels of command. Napoleon, witnessing the infection firsthand, would finally recognize its existential threat. Coalition leadership would do the same, and in an unprecedented move, the ceasefire here is declared and the fighting in the Napoleonic Wars would stop. Amidst the retreat, a French military engineer named Jacob would volunteer to destroy a barricade to secure a final escape route for the group. However, in his haste, Jacob would miscalculate the length of the fuse and kill himself, but he would succeed in creating a path for safety. With mass panic ensuing in Germany, panicked civilians within the area surrounding Frankfurt rounded up hundreds of innocent civilians and would force them into the cellar of Saalgravenstein Castle. Field Marshal Blücher and elements of the 1st Garde zu Fuß, 13th Infantry Regiment and 18th Infantry Regiment, as well as Russian pontoon building divisions and Bavarians would arrive in Kaub. In an effort to pursue Napoleon and win the Napoleonic Wars regardless of the cost, they would begin looting Saalgravenstein for supplies, and when his forces would encounter the cellar, the doors would burst open and nearly all of Blücher's forces die attempting to close the cellar, with the surviving forces being the respawning players, along with Blücher, now infected, and his accompanying officer. When the players arrive in Kaub, they are elements of the German rear guard, as well as Bavarian and Austrian stragglers attempting to get home. Blücher orders the players to secure the castle in order to secure safe passage for the Prussian army across the Rhine River. Blücher later succumbs to the infection and kills his accompanying officer. Upon securing Saalgravenstein, the players hole up and await the retreating Prussian army. Following the events of Kaub, the Prussian army is rendered largely out of action due to a collapse of the Prussian chain of command. So sadly, because I do not have time, I'll have to conclude the lore here. I don't have time to make all the lore for all the other maps, however I will do that as soon as I can. So there will be another video for Guts and Blackpowder coming out covering all of the remaining maps. That's all I have to say. Like and subscribe, join my Discord server, and bye.